believe in plus one, somebody else, another group of researchers, they delved through some aquatic settlements, and they found comet dust that dates to the Younger Dryas as well. And what I think the data is showing is that the people were painting something that they saw in the sky. Say it's I found a huge boulder, like about this, like big, about a huge boulder, and they were probably, I can imagine, probably quite concerned.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of People United 2022, the channel where we host social and educational conversations with extraordinary guests from around the world. Today, we have an episode you absolutely don't want to miss. We'll be diving in the world of ancient civilizations, mysterious discoveries, and the stories that have shaped our history. And for that, we have a very special guest. Today, we introduce you Dr. Christopher Davis. He is coming in a series of ancient apocalypse with Graham Hancock, and I'm very honored. I want to introduce you and welcome in the show of People Unite 2022 in Holland.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. And I have introduced you before we started our conversation. Who is Christopher Davis?
Okay, well, it's always odd sort of describing myself. I started I started actually in with a chemistry degree and a bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College, and I had a job as a quality control chemist in Massachusetts, and it was a nice job. It was a warehouse job, and you know, I sort of imagined that I would be doing that for much of my life. But at the end of the day, I would go home and not have. At the time, I was single, and I would go home and I'd have the rest of the night, and I would be sort of bored, and I would sort of, you know, watch TV and see some documentaries and learn about things, and that's when I personally first started watching documentaries about sort of the past, and there were there was information there that I had never heard or learned in school, and that's what sort of stuck out to me the most was like how have I not heard about this?
Mhm.
And it, you know, it was less about, you know, whether nowadays there's all sorts of debates about whether this is true or that's true. For me, the first thing was how have I not even heard about this, right? And one of the documentaries that I first saw featured Graham Hancock on it. This was in the early 2000s, but it's a documentary about sort of the past, and he was talking about some of the artifacts, especially like artifacts in the Americas that again, I there were things that I had never heard about in my education and all, and I was sort of a little bit upset that I had not been educated on these things. I felt like the education system itself just didn't cover a lot of what, you know, what they should have covered. And so and I was still working as a chemist, but I started to actually take out books and read and all sorts of other things to learn more. And a lot of it was just started out learning more about like ancient cultures, myths and legends and other things like that. And and again, you know, these are myths and legends, so there's sort of the expectation that they're not not factual, perhaps. But again, the most intriguing thing for me was that I had not even heard that these different cultures had these different legends, and they were saying all these different things about the past. And so that got me interested in sort of delving into and doing sort of research on my own to study, figure out what else was going on that I had not heard about. Um, so I eventually, to make a long story short, I
No, it's
eventually
okay.
I eventually applied to graduate school, and I was coming back to Chicago. I figured I was still young, right? And I figured that uh, either I was going to be a chemist, or if I wanted to really look into some other things, then now would be the time to sort of, jump back into school and see if I could pursue other answers. Really, I was looking for answers to a lot of the questions that arose from finding out that there was all of this extra sort of information and history. And so I applied to graduate school in two different departments for two different things. Actually, it's this part is kind of funny. So I applied to planetary geology and University of Chicago, and I applied for archaeology at the University of Illinois in Chicago. So I knew I was going back to Chicago. I'm born in Chicago. I was raised in Chicago. So I knew I was going back to Chicago, but I wasn't sure which department or which direction I wanted to go into for graduate school. And University of Chicago had, they sort of said, maybe try back next year. But the University of Illinois in Chicago, they accepted me for the archaeology program. And so I went into archaeology as a graduate student, never having taken archaeology or anthropology before. So I was really jumping in, feet first, or rather head first, I guess. I had never taken any sort of anthropology. I didn't in undergraduate college, I didn't even know what anthropology was. And here I was, a graduate student, starting for the first time in these anthropology courses. And that experience too, I was a student teacher kind of the first semester that I was a graduate student, which at the time they had not done. The department had not done that before. So it was myself and one other student that they allowed to be a student, sort of a teaching assistant, while also taking the core classes as a new student. And for me, that was hugely helpful because I had to learn a lot of things quickly. And so the only way that I really could have done that was to sort of learn along with the undergraduate students as their assistant, while also learning as a graduate student. And so that got me started on my way. And from there, I did a field school, archaeology field school. And my field school was in Easter Island. So again, these are rare chances. A few students have a chance to take, but my first archaeology field school was in Easter Island with Dr. Terry Hunt. And similar there, I was also a graduate student. So not only did I have to sort of learn how to do archaeology along with the undergraduate students, but then I had to, in the afternoons, I had to go and do my own project, my own research project on the island too. And so that was also sort of a double, sort of an intense double learning experience. And on Easter Island, the local people, the Rapa Nui, or the local population, they, like a group of them, had sort of attached to me and followed me and assisted me when I went on to do my own research in the afternoons. So in the mornings, we would all be there as a group. And then in the afternoons, I would try and do sort of my additional research, and I had Rapa Nui people there helping me. And that was hugely beneficial too. I got to, see parts of the island that most people don't. And it was a great experience. And so then when it came time for me to pick my own sort of dissertation for my graduate research, so I got my master's degree, and then I went on to do my graduate research. And so for graduate research in the U.S., you really sort of need a graduate advisor. And my first graduate advisor was working in Puerto Rico. And so I thought that I would sort of switch from, I thought I would do island archaeology. So I would go to Puerto Rico and do some archaeology there. It's not unlike doing island archaeology in Easter Island. But there was, at the time, Puerto Rico was going through sort of this contentious sort of political or power struggle with sort of the administration in the sort of the in the center, well, not the center of town, in the capital. And then you had sort of the local peoples in the region that I was researching. I was researching the Indiatas region of Puerto Rico, where they had claims of being sort of more native. And all of these contentions arose because the capital, the people in the capital were saying like nobody here is more sort of native or less native than other people, but the people in the interior of the island, you know, they had a different sentiment. They didn't feel like they were sort of being respected and being supported by the sort of government there. And so there was this contention, and so doing research is really difficult. And then my advisor also had his own sort of dealings that were not working well either. And so so I started looking for another opportunity, and that's when Anna Roosevelt, Dr. Anna Roosevelt at UIC as well. She was she does research in Brazil. And she was going down there one summer and looking for graduate students to come and participate on her dig. And my schedule was just freed. So I said, sure, that sounds like a great opportunity to go to Brazil. And so I went down there with Anna Roosevelt, and we started doing excavations there. And it was the odd thing is we were excavating at a city in Brazil called Santarém. And just for a weekend excursion, she took the group to Monte Alegre to look at the rock art. And for me, again, this was another moment where I was like, there's rock art in South America? I had no idea. You know, like you always hear about rock art in like the Pyrenees mountains of Spain and France, you know, but you never hear like rock art. And I knew like there was rock art in the United States, Southwest, but like at the time I was like, I didn't know that they had rock art, and let alone that it was like really ancient. And so I went there. She showed, she had a group of, she had a few American students. Well, she had 2 American students. She had 2 English students, and the rest of the students were Brazilian. So it was a sort of an international mix of students. And she took the whole group there to look at the rock art. And while we were there, I was looking at a couple of the drawings, and I was thinking, this is clearly something in the sky that they're drawing, right? But she was like, nobody's done research. They've only cataloged the art, you know. At the time, the art was cataloged, and you know, the people had done a lot of good sort of discoveries of the rock art there. A lot of Brazilian archaeologists. There's Edith Pereira is a Brazilian archaeologist, and she had a book with a lot of the art cataloged as well. But nobody had ever actually analyzed the art and really thought about and tried to figure out what they were really drawing. It was just, you know, we've got a couple of like this number of animals, this number of humans, a couple of handprints, and so forth. So so I thought that this was this was a great find, but we need to try and figure out what more was going on than just that they were drawing on the rocks. So you know, I figured this would be my dissertation research, and Anna Roosevelt became my advisor, and from there we you know, revisited, and you know, with the help of Brazilian students there as well, I was able to do some research. And
wow, what a story, Chris. I've got it's funny meaning, eh? This is a long introducing from people in my show. It's great, mind-blowing what you've done. That means that you are talking very much a lot about it, and your interesting and your happiness about this makes sense, because if you like something like archaeology of what was the other difficult word?
Planetary geology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but I heard in the first time, in the first place, you were only interesting and you have not knowledge, and when you're gonna research, then you find the experience, and then you go to search further, you're going through further, and that's great. That is in we have a couple in Holland, a very respectful people. They are looking for power places in Sardinia. That's a place in by Italy, and there are a lot of artifacts found in there. And they when they have coming in the show, they are so enjoying to tell it. I like that because when you get something, get to experience, and you go search further, then you see a lot of things coming to you, and that makes sense. So yes, I have, of course, a little bit tell about your career and what's your background, where your interesting was. What moments in your career would you consider the most defining?
Oh, defining. Yeah, the most
Yeah,
defining.
defining. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I went through them. I guess the most defining. You mean in once I was already doing archaeology, or?
Yes, in which time lapse? But because you was young and you was student, how old were you when you were student, and
Oh,
when
yeah.
you find all that archaeological facts? What was your age when you began to discover?
Sure, yeah. And I haven't actually sat down and thought about how old I was when these things happened. I went into graduate school in 2001. So I was what, like 20.
I know what your age, but
uh,
let me see, 25, about
yeah,
25,
like
26.
I was actually about 20, yeah, about 25, yeah, about 25, 24, 25 when I went into graduate school. It took me about a year and a half to get my master's, about 2 years. I went to Easter Island in 2004.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I was 27, 28. Um, and then I was in Puerto Rico. And then I guess I first went to Brazil in 2007.
Okay.
Um, so
6 years
2007 was
later,
when I first went into Brazil. Yeah.
became
And
30. You were.
yeah, so I was 31. Yeah. I was 31. And I kept going back year after year for the most part. So I was back in 2008, and then 2009. Well, the 2009, 2010, right around New Year's and stuff. And then I spent the longest time in 2011. I had a Fulbright scholarship at that point, and I was able to stay for 9 months. Um, so yeah, that was, and then got married. My wife is from Brazil as well.
Ah,
So yeah, so life took me in that direction from there. So I guess by 2011 was the last kind of period of really staying there for a long time. We just got back from Brazil, which we were there a month, but I wasn't doing research there. But so yeah, 2011, I guess I was 35. So yeah. But I guess you said the most defining moment of my career, I would probably still say 2011, when I was able to stay there for 9 months and really delve like into long research and excavation and stuff. And I was living with a family in the Hill area.
mhm.
And technically that area well, it's certainly a national park now. But it was, even then, it was designated a national park before they had infrastructure there, but they had a community sort of around, surrounding it. And in Brazil, like the housing regulations are a little bit like not as enforced. So people were living in this land where they were not legally supposed to. But these are they're living in the countryside. But I was staying with the family living in the countryside for quite some time as well. So in my perspective, it was always like a lot of archaeology, but also a little bit of cultural anthropology, because I was sort of embedded living with sort of countryside Brazilian people for quite a while, and yeah, that helped me in many ways because like I got to see how people dealt with the landscape.
Mm.
And this is very important for my research in rock art. Like with rock art, you can't really, I mean, it's not, you don't get the full picture just sort of arriving and looking at the art, right? It really helped me to be there for a long period of time and to see like how do people really get acclimated to the landscape and what are they really signifying, what resources are really important and all sorts of other things like that. And that included actually spending, like I tried to camp one night on top of the hill to see what it was like at night. And it was not the safest idea. And certainly my host family was uncomfortable with it the whole time. They didn't want me to spend the night on the hill. They were saying, well, there were many different reasons, but it was basically they were worried about my safety. But
Oh,
yeah, all of those things helped to sort of understand and feel more of a connection to the land. And in doing that, that gave me sort of a different insight as to why people might have been painting on the rock like thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, about 10,000 or more years ago. So, yeah.
wow. That's a very interesting point. We talking about further in the interview. You first became involved in research and won the NECMA in 2011. Is that
Mhm.
right? Yes.
Well,
And
I first started doing research there in 2007.
oh, 2007. Yes. Okay. Yes. And um, what about Montenegrin discoveries? Can you explain the most important archaeological discoveries in Montenegro?
Yeah, the most important, actually, the most important discovery is the. I would say it's. I found a huge boulder, like about this, like big, about a huge boulder, in my excavation. Right, it was in the lowest levels, basically, a huge boulder with paint on it, and there was also a chunk of red ochre near it and also some carbon near it as well, like at the base of it. And so you have the big boulder with some paint on it, some red and yellow paint on it, and then there's like a red chunk of ochre not too far away, and some carbon right underneath the boulder. So I was able to radiocarbon date the big boulder with the paint on it, and that's where we got like a 11,000 something before present. So. Um, and I got a couple other dates, but that particularly was helpful because I couldn't, especially at the time, and even now, it's really hard to date the actual art. So to be able to sort of say like the art that you're looking at on the wall is from this time period, it's really for most people don't have a direct way of doing that unless the paint is like itself carbon or something. Or there's a couple of new methods now that they're doing with sort of oxalates and other things, calcium crusts, but those are really difficult. And also it like you need a lot of the wall surface, right? And this paint is not that thick. Like you can't just scrape off the paint and then sort of do different analysis with it. As a matter of fact, the paint, a lot of the paint there is what I say is like it looks like it's embedded in the rock because calcium crust and other things have formed. So it's
Mm.
not even on like the surface anymore. It's like embedded in the rock. So so there's no direct way to date the paint on the walls, but something that fell and it fell into the ground that you can excavate and then date the layers is a rare find, and that's what I found, right? So I was able to date the charcoal that was underneath the rock to say it's at least this amount of, like 11,000 or so years old. Also, though, that excavation, the excavation I did, there were grooves like gouged out of the rock And they, like the tip of it reaches that same sort of level, like 11,000 or so. The beginning of it, though, I was able to sort of date the layers for where the gouges in the rock began. And we're only talking about a small time frame, too. They were also like 10,000, 11,000. So a lot of this work was done at the same time period. A lot of the work of like the walls and stuff, but also the art. And so that helps to date the art. And so I guess from a technical standpoint, that's the biggest find. But from a kind of a layman's term, the biggest find is actually in the book that I just published. The book that just came out before sunset. And in the book, I was able to sort of delve more deeply into my theory as to what was going on, and sort of the main interest there, I guess the biggest find there is that I suspect, and again, as an archaeologist, you always have to be careful not to say, like, I can't say that I proved this, but I suspect, and what I think the data is showing is that the people were painting something that they saw in the sky at the end of the Ice Age, basically, at the Younger Dryas. Either the beginning or the end. It's kind of uncertain, but almost certainly almost certain. I think that what they drew was actually a comet in the sky that was hitting the Earth. And this is controversial because the theory of like the comet impact during the Younger Dryas is contested on both sides, but more and more data has been coming out to suggest that there's evidence of a comet hitting the Earth. I think that they actually painted that comet at my site. And literally as we looks like you froze. Okay, yeah. Literally as we're speaking, like this morning there was an article. Actually, it was from August 8th, I believe, in Plus One. Somebody else, another group of researchers, they delved through some aquatic settlements, and they found comet dust that dates to the Younger Dryas as well. And so, again, we're finding more and more of this, and this is a theory that Hancock himself had adopted and has been, and I think that my site, the people there painted the actual comet. There's a really big image of something sort of descending, earth diving figure, as we call it in rock art, but it looks as bright as their depiction of the sun right next to it. And so I think that they might have witnessed the actual impact of something. Obviously, this would have been far away from Brazil, but such an event would have been obviously noticeable. And I say that for two reasons. First of all, because of the drawing, but also because of the time frame and the excavations that I had done. The dates that I got for my excavation, they began living there shortly before the Younger Dryas, and they leave shortly before the end of the Younger Dryas. And I shouldn't say leave. They stop. Like, there's no sign of anybody living at that site by the time the Younger Dryas ends. And there's a gap of a good 6,000 years before anybody comes back to live at that site again. So we're talking about this time frame of the Younger Dryas and the image of what looks like a comet crashing the Earth and everything. Yes. I think that we've got that.
My opinion is the existence of a human being is so much longer than everybody says. Be the normal astrology, or said, oh, we live here 10,000. Well, no, really not, because there are a lot of artifacts, a lot of special people lived over the world, and you have told about the sightings of rockets, but in Egypt is it almost known, but in America is, for me, and what we said in Ancient Eclipse with Graham Hancock, it's mind-blowing, because they will still find more and more artifacts. And if we want to understand our human being, our human history, then it's very important we tell the truth about this. And it's very important to understand how smart the people in that time lapse are. They were smarter than we, how we built with our houses like before. Eh? And there are in Sardinia found, or Bosnia, were found a pyramid of 35,000 years old. Come on, it's not a story. It's for me, I think it's really true, because what you found is about 10,000, about 15,000 years ago. I wasn't there. I have no picture of that at the time, so I can't you see it. But with your archaeological administration, you can find the points to each other, and that's important. I come back with kind of your career, but I have another question about you. What I want to know, what is archaeastronomy? I can read it. Archaeastronomy, and could you explain what it is and how it applies to Monte Alegre?
Sure. Yeah, archaeoastronomy is just the the study of how ancient people studied the skies. So
Okay.
yeah, so like how ancient people were dealing with astronomy.
Is it the earlier astrology what we now know? Could you put it together a little bit the same? Only
Okay.
in that time was it others than we now know, but they in that time were smart enough to reach the sky and to read the sky, and so it's the earlier astrology.
Okay, so it's not astrology.
Okay, the difference between that.
Yeah, so astronomy is just sort of the positioning of the stars and everything, following the stars.
Oh, astrology.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, astrology.
Yeah. So yeah, astronomy is sort of where the stars are located. Astrology, though, is the interpretation that different human groups have had about why the stars are positioned the way that they are.
Mm.
Now, but it is important to understand that for most human history, they applied a meaning to why the stars were the way they were. But this is an important part of what I found in my research as an archaeoastronomer, is especially for the Amazon, right? But this is also true for many places in the world, is that astronomy, the actual positioning of like where the stars are positioned and how people were tracking them and stuff, they used the position of the stars to help them keep track of their own world, like the time frame and everything. So, for example, a lot of people know to some degree that our year is based on the sun, right? But we don't today. We don't have to sort of pay attention to the sun to know that, right? But for example, in Monte Alegre, the sun, the solar year, what we call a year, is the sun as you can track it on the horizon, whether it's where it rises and where it sets throughout the year. And because Monte Alegre is about 2 degrees south of the equator, so basically on the equator, each day it rises from the north, like it'll rise or set on the northern side, so to your right, right? And each day it sets a little bit further to your left, and then when it reaches what we call the December solstice, right? That's the furthest south that it is, and then it starts to go back the other way to the furthest north position. So for the northern hemisphere, our summer, the sun is furthest north, right? And for our winter, the sun is furthest south. And because we live north of the equator, we live close to the poles, especially in Holland, right? We don't need to track the sun to know, like, oh, it's getting cold, right? So we have all these signs, and this is my point. We have all these signs where we're living of other changes in the environment, right? It snows, the trees lose their leaves and change their colors, lose their leaves, all sorts of other stuff. In the Amazon, they don't have any of those things. In the Amazon, it's green, like you'll have a tree that like loses its leaves or something, maybe because there was a fire, or because of ants or something. But you don't have all those other signs that indicate the change in the season. But what you do have, and what does become more clear, is like where the sun is positioned along the horizon. And at my site, they actually were tracking the sun, and they had figured this out, or whether they knew it already or whatever the case may be, they painted it so that they had that record for themselves. Now, it doesn't end there, though. Once you have that record, what I argue they did with the art is they started to fill in their year. So they had a year painted on where the sun was positioned, right? And then they filled in, like, this time of year might be sort of the time where we come here to get, manatee or something. And this time of the year is where we get birds. And this time of the year is the best time to hunt for land animals and stuff, right? And they filled it in that way. Now, here's where astrology comes back, though. When we think of astrology, we think of like Gemini, Sagittarius, Aquarius, all of those things, right? Those are the constellations along the equatorial belt, the zodiac, right? Which is to say that when you're living on the equator, those are the constellations that rise and that you see in the horizon. Now, the thing is, those constellations basically in a given year, each new constellation that appears on the horizon, in about a month, it rises up and you get another constellation. So there are 12 zodiacs because there's basically 12 constellations that sort of circle through. Now, what we're calling constellations, though, these are what the people back then grouped for that month. And it's we still have this practice to some degree among some native groups in the Amazon, where the group of stars that they see on the horizon for that particular time, whether it looks like a frog or not, they're going to say this is a frog constellation, right? Because it's a device for understanding. What they're saying by saying that is this is the time of year where the frogs like seeing at night or something, the mating season of the frog. And this is why, this is what we can do at this particular time. Another time of the year, like certain groups, like the Bororo native groups, like they have this festival, the Peki festival, which is like a time of year where like this fruit sprouts on a tree. And that might be the time of year where they do their typical marriages and other things, right? Or their coming of age ceremony. Actually, it's a coming of age ceremony. So this is when you recognize sort of the children who have become adults for that year. So the stars that they see on the horizon, no matter what they look like, they might sort of describe it or call it the Peki fruit, right? Because that helps them to remember this is the time of year when you see those stars, this is the festival that we're going to be preparing. And this is true for much of the world. The further you go back in time, this is how people kept track of their cycle. And again, we think, oh, well, Scorpio should look like a scorpion, and vaguely, you could imagine claws and stuff, but it's really about whatever the stars look like. We're going to call it this because this is what's important to us at this particular time, so that when we see those stars again, we know this is what we have to prepare for. So that's really one of the defining moments that I learned with archaeoastronomy specifically. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that they did at the site that I claim that they did was that they painted sort of the path of the sun, and then they filled it in with an almanac of their yearly sort of resources. I don't know all of what people 13,000 years ago were most interested in, but but that certainly seems to be like one of the main uses of why you would even do that.
That was the question I want to ask you. Is there a connection between the three things: astronomy, astrology, and that other difficult word is archaeoastronomy?
Archaeoastronomy. Yeah.
Is there a connection with that, or is it a part of it? It
So
could be. It could be.
yeah, so this is from a, I guess, from a academic standpoint, astronomers have nothing really to do with astrology. Like they really don't want to
Okay.
even entertain
That are enemies.
right. And likewise, archaeoastronomers are in archaeology, and we deal a lot more with the way what's considered naked astronomy, right? We don't have telescopes. Astronomers themselves, they're looking through telescopes, right? And then they're looking like all sorts of things that the average human in the past never could have seen, right? At least
Sure.
not with the naked eye. Not with the naked eye. Now, however they might have learned about, companion stars to Sirius, I don't know. But 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 archaeoastronomy is interested in how the ancient people were studying the stars, right? Whereas astronomers today, they have no interest in all of that. And then both groups, astronomy and archaeoastronomers, largely disregard astrology. They consider astrology to be some like hobby or something that people do. Like they really disparage it. But I want to make sure that I convey to you that astrology has its roots in archaeoastronomy and vice versa, because what I just told you, how the people use the stars, that's what astrology came from. Like that's just people's
Yes.
interpretation of the meaning behind why the stars are there. And that's been a useful tool to humans for a long time in history. So I really would warn people not to disparage any of those groups, because they all give some meaningful information about
Yes.
what we were doing in the past.
Of course, Chris. Okay. Well, what role do the prehistoric rock painting play, and what do we believe the represents? What they represent?
I'm not sure I understand. Could you say that again?
What role do the prehistoric rock paintings play, and what do we believe they represent?
Oh, okay.
I'm
Sure. Yeah.
watching the series, especially. I think, oh my God, Christopher, come on my show. I must see that kind of video when you on the rocket there, and it's almost one thing, one word. It's amazing, because
Mhm.
what we know in Egypt, we know a lot about that, but yeah, just in Monte Alegre, wonderful.
Yeah. I can try to answer this question, but I should first say that there are probably multiple things that they're using the rock art, that they were doing with the rock art, right? Because we do get handprints and other things, but oftentimes what I found specifically at Monte Alegre was that many of the handprints were on top of earlier paintings. Now, I don't know how much earlier, but there is a sort of a conflating of time with the rock art that we see, meaning that there were probably some earlier paintings, and then later on, people came and revered them in some way by doing a handprint. Like the handprints could mean something anywhere from touching the ancients, or it could be I was here, right? This could just be somebody's in the ancient times are saying, hey, I made it here. Like it could be a number of different things, but it does seem to be that some handprints are on top of earlier paintings, right?
Mhm.
And to some degree, it's oftentimes argued, and I would take this argument as well, that for some of these paintings, they are revering them as, oh, this is this great event that I heard about, and let me touch it to be more close to it, right? Much like what you're doing with the podcast, right? Like You know, these are things that you heard about, and you want to sort of become more attached to them in some way, connected to them. So there are multiple things going on with the rock art. I do think that a bulk of the rock art that I presented on the show and stuff, and that's there, has a lot to do with them tracking the position of the sun. And I believe that they were tracking the position of the sun because they were noticing changes that occurred around the end of the ice age. Again, maybe the comet impacting and temperatures and weather changing and all sorts of other things. And they were probably, I can imagine, probably quite concerned. I don't know how much, I guess I should give a sort of a brief sort of explanation as to what might have happened, right? If such a thing as a comet would have hit, right? So if a comet would have hit the Earth around that time or something, whatever it was, but you would have, first of all, obviously bright flash, hot, you know, the air would grow really hot momentarily. And again, I want to stress for anybody listening, Brazil is far away from where the suspected impact of the comet would have occurred. But a comet coming anywhere close to Earth, even within the sort of the path of the moon and the Earth, would have been huge and bright. And comets don't just come in a day, by the way. A lot of people also don't understand. Like normally when we see comets, they last for weeks, and then they come back again like a couple of months later as the comet whirls back around the sun. But a comet that would be hitting the Earth, you would see day after day getting bigger and bigger and more spectacular in the sky until it's even visible during the daytime. So this is why, you know, I think that they drew something as big as the sun, because it was sort of as big and impressive as the sun. But then once it hit and put up whatever might have been, whatever it might have put up, which we suspect would have been a lot of water, right? Especially if it melted glaciers and other things. Sure, there's evidence, suggestive evidence of massive wildfires in the U.S., in like Canada and the U.S., in North America. The fires and would not have reached South America, but the smoke would have blacked out the skies throughout much of the world. Smoke and water vapor and all sorts of other things. So we're talking about long periods of darkness. So there's a possibility that if people were living during that time in South America, and they were not killed by obviously they were too far away to be killed by any sort of immediate effects, but they would have experienced long periods of darkness. And therefore they would have been quite concerned about when and where they might see the sun again. And even after that, you know, they might have been quite concerned about what happened to the sun is going to happen again, and so keeping track of the sun. So I believe that a lot of what they were doing, especially with the big grid that I was presenting in the series, I believe they were keeping track of the sun. That being said, so some of the other things, because these are things that people often mention. I often get, hey, how do you know that they weren't just doodling on the wall? And and every person who studies rock art, they have somebody ask that question, which is understandable, right? Because of course people are gonna, you know, kids, ancient kids too, or just like modern kids, they might have grabbed something and doodled on the wall and stuff. Let me say, when I was there, the couple of years that I was going there, I took some ochre and sort of drew it on the wall. To see like how does, I'm not near the paintings, but on a test wall, to see like how would it last, how does, like, what's going on, and it washes away quickly. It is the rainforest, right? So like just taking ochre and drawing it on the wall is not going to last more than a day or two. What they did, the art that you're looking at, it was carefully preserved. Like they were doing some sort of chemistry, ancient chemistry here, which is interesting because I started in chemistry. They had ochre, and they mixed it with a couple of things, and I don't fully understand exactly what one of the things I was trying to figure out was what they were mixing it with. I heard recently some of the Brazilians who are at the site and doing research, they told me recently when I was there 2 years ago, they told me that, or I guess 3 years ago, they told me that one of the ingredients, the binding ingredients, was egg. So there are like vulture eggs and all sorts of other things there. And so, that is possible that they were using egg as part of the binding. So they had ochre for sure. I did some analysis on the paint, and most likely it's ochre. We find also things like titanium, phosphorus. You get a lot of phosphorus from bone. So they might have been mixing bone or something. Phosphorus you could also get from eggshell. But I suspect the biggest binding ingredient was a type of tree resin, because they were using this tree resin. Native peoples were using this tree resin even by the time you get to European contact. And they were making these cuyas, which are bowls out of gourds. And the cuyas were so watertight, like water impermeable from the resin, that the Europeans were impressed with it and set up a shop. It was actually a missionary. The missionary set up a sort of a cuya shop, because these bowls were so impermeable with the resin. And this was like in the 1700s. So they had been, dealing with these tree resins for the native people had knowledge of these tree resins for a very long time. And I suspect that they used some of the tree resin mixed with other things like egg, perhaps, to bind the paint onto the walls. And that's why the paint hasn't washed away in like 13,000 years. So could they have possibly doodled? It's possible, but the hills are not easy to get to also. Like you're hiking up a hill, and I'm saying hill. For me, having been born in Chicago where land is flat, to me it was like a mountain, but technically it's a hill. It's hard getting there. It's hot and all sorts of other things. So where they would have prepared this paint is also sort of like, that's not something that you could just prepare and sort of bring up and then start doodling. So it took some careful planning. Then also, in addition to that, my research has shown that the wall itself, they primed. They didn't just pick a wall and say, oh, let's paint here. They actually like primed the wall with some sort of background primer, like a light colored, white to beige colored primer. And then they painted on top of that. So there was a lot of preparation that went into this art. And so that's why the argument for doodling kind of goes away when you start to realize, like, all of this preparation, this is not something that you just do one day on a happenstance.
No. Okay. What are the most remarkable insights you gained from these things? And are these still mysteries or unanswered questions that keep you up at night?
Oh, yes. There are more questions, I guess, that I still have than answers. Also, nothing is certain. Like I don't have an answer where I feel like 100% certain. So there's always that. What keeps me up at night is I really kind of wonder. For me, one of the questions is the abandonment of the site, and it's not just where I excavated. My advisor Anna Roosevelt excavated at Pedro Cave, Caverna de Pedro Pintada. We both found that after the Younger Dryas, we have no archaeological evidence of people being in that area for a good 6,000 years. And that's an incredible time span of there not being evidence there. Now, keep in mind, I was saying I live with my host family, right? when I was there. My host family, they don't live in the hills. Like nobody lives in the hills, even today. Like today, nobody lives in the hills. They live around the hills. So it could have just been that. Maybe they were living in a more amiable location, and they were maybe periodically visiting the hills. But even the local people, they don't live in the hills. They go hunt through the hills every once in a while. But like most people don't, like they're not going through the hills every day. So so it could be that. But yeah, I'm most sort of I am most wondering like what really did happen. It does seem to me like there was some sort of event that happened, and then this place was abandoned for a long period of time. So so that's one of the things that I so there are some other things that keep me up at night, but that has more to do with local legends and
I think the children, Chris.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever found evidence that these ancient cultures had astronomical knowledge beyond what we expected?
I can't say that I found evidence of that. I have not found evidence of them having like sophisticated like equipment or anything like that. I can briefly mention though that while I was in the hills, uh, well, no, I think that it's well, yeah, I don't have any direct evidence of.
My
of
opinion, I think so. Well, more than we know. And they have finally other things to get the astronomical knowledge. Why I think is because there are a lot of evidence that, like Egypt or something else, wherever in the world, you have seen that plates with stars, sun, moon, maybe planets. I think that they are farther than we now think, and even their how they use their materials
right. Yeah.
with
That,
stones or how they build something. And I think that a lot of things are gone or hide it for people because if we coming through and find the real truth, then people think, they have expressed, keeping, hiding, that they were much smarter than we think.
yeah. So, and this is what I was gonna say. Again, you asked if I had evidence of like that they had greater astronomy, right? Or astronomical knowledge, and I don't have evidence of that. I don't have evidence of that. But what I do have, what I was going to comment on was I had mentioned before the gouges in the rock. I don't know how they made those gouges. Also, I I did find some stone tools in a cache underneath one of the paintings, like a hole, right underneath one of the paintings. That the stone tools are burned, like half, half, half of them are like half of the side is burned, and the other half is fine. And I don't know how they did that. And I've shown those to a couple of different people, and nobody knows how they. And it's a very fine, even sort of dividing line, almost as if like they dipped it into some super hot thing, but like where they dipped it, like it cuts off. And I don't know how they did that either. So the gouges in the wall, I don't understand how they might have done those. And also these sort of these two-toned, these burned lithics. And when I say burn, this is sandstone. They largely had sandstone tools there. That's all they had. They didn't have chert and flint and all of those other cool, like easier to flake things. They didn't have obsidian. They just had sandstone. But to burn sandstone, we're talking about temperatures like 2200 degrees Celsius or something. Like that's not something achievable with a normal bonfire. That's you don't even come close with a normal bonfire. As a matter of fact, it's hard to do with like a blowtorch nowadays. But somehow these stones, and I'll have to send you a picture of them. They seem to have been burned, and maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe it's something else going on, but it looks, even under a microscope, it looks almost vitrified. But it's just half of the stone, and I don't know how they did that. And these stones, again, were in a hole, in a marked hole underneath the biggest sun painting, the painting that faces the June solstice, right? So so they squirreled them away like on purpose, and these rocks are like burned in half, or at least they look to me like they're burned in half. Maybe they're not burned, but that's what they look like. And if so, I don't know how they could have done that. That's not understandable by normal conventional ways. So, yeah.
That's why I'm thinking were smarter than we think now in this time.
Yeah.
They had tools, something, and they have.
And these rocks are like burned in half, or at least they look to me like they're burned in half. Maybe they're not burned, but that's what they look like. And if so, I don't know how they could have done that. That's not understandable by normal conventional ways. So, yeah.
That's why I'm thinking were smarter than we think now in this time.
Yeah.
They had tools, something, and they have tested, well, work it, how can we do it? Maybe they used the sun as for the warmth and the heat, something like less, don't know, and then they can cut something what normally can't. So my opinion, that's some research I have done in all those years, is that ancient cultures were in the past much smarter than we think. And if that is what I said, then is it possible that they have the knowledge, how they do that? But it's not normal to can cut a stone with what? Look at that to see what we now use. A saw, huh? That's the only possible thing, or with a lot of heat. But I think, and that a lot of ancient cultures in the past are much smarter were than we think, and it's a moment a lot of speculate, and maybe we coming our life behind what kind of stuff they used.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
We are in a time of that a lot of things coming up, and a lot of people have interesting in ancient cultures, in ancient rock stories, astronomical knowledge, everything the knowledge coming up, and that's good. That's very good, even for our children, because they have the right to know where we come from.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yes, absolutely. Again, they were doing even the paint I had mentioned earlier. I don't know how they were making the paint so it's vibrant and it's very like long lasting. I don't know fully how they did that. So the gouges in the rock, the paint, the burn lithics, there's a lot of things that that they were doing that I don't have a good explanation for. I think I would agree.
Yes, and how you deal or react about skeptics or people who doubt your findings, because there are a lot of people that, oh, Dr. Christopher is great, and what he have found was great. For my opinion, what you do is very great and good for the history and for the future for the people.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I do get every time I try and publish an article, I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is like people are still doing this sort of research," and that like it kind of bothers me that the professional side doesn't realize the usefulness of these sorts of things. A lot of archaeologists don't think that archaeoastronomy or rock art are real archaeology. So I do get a lot of this sort of negative blowback and all sorts of other things. I mean, I largely ignore it, but all I can do is say, look, this is what I've got. This is how I came to these conclusions. If I offer people to offer a better, theory, if you got one, for sure. But and this is, I guess, the part that sort of bothers me about that debate is a lot of the critics criticize, but don't offer other theories that might explain the data. Usually what happens is they just ignore the data. And that's actually a major problem, especially in archaeology. Data that they don't like, and certainly Graham Hancock could speak to this, data that they don't like, they largely ignore.
Yes.
And that's not what a scholar, a scientist, a researcher is like. We're supposed to be looking at the things that aren't easily explainable and trying to explain them, instead of sort of ignoring what we can't explain. So, it's a problem, and I don't know.
In my podcast with Art Pisa about ancient aliens and about pyramids in Sardinia or archaeological facts and the pyramids in Bosnia, there is a Dutch documentary maker, Marijn Poels. For people that they don't know who he is, found him on YouTube. He has a lot of great stuff. And let's see what Graham Hancock now doing well. And he was been there, and there are in their research of the pyramids, they found a leaf between a stone, and they've dated about a long time ago. And I know from Art Pisa, have said in my broadcasting, the normal archaeologists, they are not curious. They follow only the books and not going looking further. My opinion is, if you are archaeologist, then you must looking farther than what's staying in the books, because you can only follow the books. Okay, it's fine, and you staying for the class and you tell something what makes sense. But that's one of the points why I liked history, because he told it very interesting. And if somebody told it very interesting, like kind of these things, is people tell what behind. I understand a lot of people think, oh, well, that's mind blowing. That's too much for me. That's go too far for me. Okay. But if you are open and interested in a person who do this job, then we can talk a lot of more about these things. And a little bit coming up now that more people are open, like the series from Graham Hancock, of course, and with you in his broadcasting. That makes sense, because it's very important to see some other things on the other side. If we only get one thing of information, we don't get choose what our perception is. So it's very important, that's my opinion, to understand our human history. I'm not God. Well, sometimes I think I'm God, but but that we all think. But I'm not being there when he created the earth. He has gave us to research the things. There are a lot of stuff they are not found. So much. I think maybe 5 at 8% were found. Artifacts in the world, even in Holland, even in Europe, but America too, and the world. It's not ready with the world. We must learn how our existing was, and that's my opinion. And that's fine. You are in my program, but I want to ask something on you. When you came in contact with Graham Hancock, what was? Why were you 5 minutes still on the phone, or you know him?
No, they contacted me actually, surprisingly.
Oh,
Graham had come across my article, my 2016 article, and somebody from the show contacted me first, and they had asked me, I guess, about Graham Hancock because he's the first season had already come out, and he had received a lot of criticism for the first season. And even the Society of American Archaeologists put out a statement against him and other things. So they were very wary about,
mhm.
who they definitely wanted to get archaeologists on the show for the second season, but they were concerned about, like, are they going to find sort of unbiased archaeologists to be on the show? They didn't explain any of this. I just got a call from some producer who's they didn't even identify as a producer, but they were asking me about like what I thought about Graham Hancock and the show and all sorts of other things. And I had seen the first season, and I answered truthfully. But again, like I said, as I started out with you, Graham was one of the two people who influenced me to go into archaeology. So I've never, I think that right now there's a big sort of battle between professional archaeologists and I guess public presenters of archaeology and other people. Graham Hancock himself would call himself an author, a journalist, but not an archaeologist. He never called himself an archaeologist, but I think that the fighting has a lot to do just with the popularity, and a lot of the general public, they are more familiar with Graham Hancock, and probably a good deal of the public, like if you were to ask them name an archaeologist or something, they might actually say Graham Hancock, whereas most professional archaeologists, they're not known. I'm not known myself. But a lot of them have some take issue with, I guess, non-professionals being the face of their profession. And I can understand that, but I think that, attacking those who are popular and successful is kind of the wrong way to go at it. I always, archaeology is such a, it's not a natural science, right? It's a social science. And it is, it's not even, while archaeology itself is more popular, anthropology is not. But in the United States, archaeology is taught within anthropology. And I think that anytime any subject or any person brings more people into sort of an interest in the topic, that's a good thing. And so we need to embrace that. And I think it's ultimately helpful for Hancock and others to bring people to the topic. And then we can sort of give them all of the facts and other things just as I did. I heard about these things, and then I went and did some research and heard more details. And I
Yes.
think that's helpful.
My opinion is about you told about the fight between the regular astrology and the people who found with years of experience other things. My opinion, it's all about consciousness and understanding. If we not have the consciousness, we cannot understanding our history, and that's very important. And that's what I further said. It's about if we don't understand our history, how can we a good life in the world? All about is consciousness. because
Yeah.
if we don't have consciousness, your awakening was to research in the papers and to fly in Brazil, and between that you find your loving woman, and it's great that you have done that, because they call you for would you come in the show, but all about that is
Yeah.
consciousness. Are you agree, or if we're not consciousness, we cannot explain things, or we can not understand other people better. I
Right.
think if we are more conscious as world people, then will everything be the same. The world is constantly in change. Even the earth, our consciousness, everything.
Yeah, I would agree, and actually, we would probably, we'd have to do a different show about consciousness altogether. That's something I could talk about at length, but that would be a whole different episode,
Yes.
right? But yeah, consciousness. I think that, yeah, what many people would chalk up to sort of a coincidence or something. Even the fact that you found me and invited me to this show, it could be described more on a through consciousness, through the sort of these subtle workings, um, communications, maybe nonverbal communications and other things. So there's a whole number of ways in which that could be viewed. But again, that would I could speak at length about consciousness, but it's a whole different thing. That would be another 2 hours or so.
Yeah, I see it
That's,
again. What was like working on the Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse, and what do you think about how you work and the research were presented in the show? Were you confident?
yeah, no, it was great working on the show. I had a great time there. And the producers were also very nice and helpful. Uh, I was I was comfortable with the show, with Graham, and certainly I'm fine with the way that they presented things. Yeah, I've got no complaints. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I would, love to do it again. It was a great time.
What was the nicest experience when you're working together? Because you're working together, he is the author, he asking questions like what I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not Graham Hancock. But how was the working together? How long was the taking of before 2, 3 days, 8 hours, or was it okay? Let's shot that and then come you and will. Can you a little bit explain about that?
Sure. Yeah. He had a tight schedule because he was all his flight schedules were tight, and I think I think their flight was delayed, so we only had
Oh,
one day to tape, but
ooh,
getting to the site itself was took an extra day. So all in all, we were there for 3 to 4 days, maybe. But the actual taping was just on one day, and we didn't even get to do we didn't get to go to all the sites that we originally wanted to do. Even that day, it was very hot, and then they had actually advised us not to go up the hill to do another segment because we were on two different hills, right? The art is on more than one hill, but they advised us not to go in the afternoon, not to go up the taller hill because it was already really hot, and Graham was already suffering from some of the heat and stuff, and so we couldn't do the second site. But yeah, we were again getting there. We had to take you take a flight. We took a flight into Manaus. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. We flew into Santarém, then we took a boat from Santarém to Monte Alegre. But the boat ride takes like overnight. And actually, that was one of the best. Going going along the Amazon River at night on a clear night because usually it's cloudy, right? I was able to see like the stars at night, the Milky Way, and everything. Like you could literally see the Milky Way. That was great, and everybody was on the boat. So we got to talking and we had food and everything. And you know, so all in all, I'd say we spent, yeah, it must be like 4 days, I believe. But the taping was just one day. The taping is this is the second documentary I was on. I was on a PBS documentary as well. The tapings are always sort of the same. The thing that sticks out to me, and not in a bad way, is just kind of funny. You never think about it. Is we spend a lot of time taping walking to the site. Like they want to see you walking to the site. So we do a couple of takes of that, but then the actual interviewing during the cameras is no different from this, really. Like it was just one take. You know, they might have asked, like, you know, there's a break. It isn't all one long interview and then they chop it up. We took some breaks in between the questions that he wanted to ask, and I believe there might have been, like, he might have asked a question in a different way to get a different sort of answer, but we didn't do, okay, let's try that again. Let me give you the question again. So it was all sort of more or less an organic sort of interview. It was just, we were taking breaks largely because, again, the sun was beaming on us. What you can't see is people holding up umbrellas to block the sun. And so those sorts of things you don't normally see. But everything else was basically filmed live. I'm sure they edited it to sort of fit into the time frame, but they didn't edit the content or anything.
Has the series increased attention to your work?
Slightly. Yeah, like, you know, people like you were able to find me. But like my job is thankfully, because I'm at a college and not sort of a research institution, my job's not really no longer dependent on my research and other things. So it's been it's sort of been a slight increase in attention, but nothing crazy. Like people don't recognize me or anything.
Well, we can talk a lot, but you must drinking so that we keep it not too long. I've got one special question and then our end question. And well, the last normal question: if you could reveal one archaeological discovery to the world that's still a secret, what would it be?
You mean of my research or any research in the world? Of my own research, probably what I just mentioned about the image being possibly being a comet. But it's already it's already in my book. So no, I haven't held back. Well, okay, that's not true. Some of the personal experiences I had when I was there, they're not sort of based on my archaeological research, but they're kind of they're very interesting. I had a lot of weird things sort of happen out there. But yeah, so that would probably be what I would reveal. But again, that's not research, but it did happen while I was conducting research. Yeah, a couple of weird things happening. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. First of all, it was me a great honor to listen to your story about your career, about your foundings in Monte Alegre. It was a great experience, and I will thank you about it. Last questions. Did you like to in my show?
Sure. You mean this show or the Netflix show?
How do you find our casting?
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It's very relaxing talking to you, and it's always wonderful when the host has such an interest and a zeal and some knowledge on the topic as well. And it sounds like you certainly delve into this topic, and
that's very important.
Yeah,
it's for me important to interesting in the guests I have, and that's why I get all the questions. And well, and there were a lot of questions, but I think it's now enough for now. I will only very interesting if you like the show we have done.
Yes, absolutely. It's very refreshing. And I do have one thing. Could I sort of promote my book?
Yes, of course. Why not? Why should I? Before Sunset, Christopher Davis, Ice Age Imagination, Rock Art, and Archaeoastronomy of the Younger Dryas. Hey,
Yeah,
that's in one word, eh? In one punk.
yeah,
But
yeah. Just
how can people find your book? And yes, how can, because it is America,
right.
will it be translated in other languages in the future?
Well, it depends on the publisher. So it's from Springer Publishing. It is available, or yeah, you can find it on Amazon.com.
Okay.
And right now it's hardcover, but the publisher decides, like, if after a certain number of sales or whatever, it could become a paperback, and then it's a lot more, a lot cheaper price. And then for most books, it's only when they're really popular do they start to translate them into other languages. So that's the only other language I know is and only cursory is Brazilian Portuguese. So
But
I
it's, you are always welcome if you have got new stuff, a new book, and that's the power of social media. If somebody have a book, you can promote it, and
right.
of course your book. So people in Holland, if you want this book, uh, go to Amazon and find this book, and you find the book where you can buy it. You can order it on Amazon. So I want really promote this, and it will stand in on the blog. Do you want to read the blog with Christopher Davis? You can also go to www.peopleunited2022.com. You can read my blog about this broadcasting. First of all, it's English, and for the people are in Dutch, don't be scared. Under the English, the description will be in Dutch. So for two languages, can people read it? And do you like this video? And do you want that Christopher come back? I want to, but okay. You can give a thumb and subscribe. And do you come from America or something else? Subscribe my channel. And if you don't can listen Dutch, you can translate it on YouTube, the video in your own language.
Yeah.
That's very important to tell. So only in this video will the subtitles in Dutch. It doesn't matter. Okay, well, you were happy about our broadcasting or not?
Yes, I was happy,
Okay.
and thanks a lot, Danny, for
Yeah.
inviting me. It's been a great time.
Do you want to come back? And maybe if you want to come back, do you like to give some presentation about the pictures you have? Do you
Yes,
like that?
absolutely. I would love to.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So you will come back in People United.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
Yes.
Well, it's me a great honor to have to introduce you. It was a great honor to talk with you and to listen. What a kind of stuff you have. It's amazing. And keep going. And sometimes it's like fish that's swimming against the other fishes that we need it to get more consciousness. It was very nice, but I've got a last question, and it's very nice to hear you were enjoying my show. Great, but do you want to give the listeners or the watchers on Spotify or on YouTube? My question on you is, what would you give to back on the people? What kind of wise words you want to give to the people? Maybe a nice word, anecdote, or something else. That's my end question.
Oh, wow. I don't have anything like off the top of my head. Um, But
from your heart.
yeah, it's it's, well, speaking on sort of consciousness, I guess I'd say that we're all connected in some way, and it follow follow the feelings, the drive, the questions that you have, and when you do so, you'll find other people moving in that same direction. And we sort of talked briefly about, like, consciousness and coincidence, and really it's all of those serendipitous coincidences that's really sort of when consciousness is sort of aligning itself to others of like mind. And so eventually you will find yourself aligned with people in the same direction that you're moving, with the same heart that you have. So it's very important to keep a warm heart and a clear mind, and you will find yourself surrounded by those with similar thoughts and feelings.
Thank you. Where can people find you? Do you have any social media or website they can find you? Where can people find you to get more information?
I'm not really on social media. I do have academia webpage. It's Christopher.Davis at academia.edu, Christopher S. Davis at academia.edu. Yeah, that's about it. I don't really have social media. I sort of tune in. Usually I just tune into YouTube and other things, but I don't really have a social media face front.
It doesn't matter, but you have a website, and over you have a blog site, and that will here standing in the describing of our podcast. So that we place there the other. So it's coming good. Dear Christopher, thank you for coming. It was a great honor, and we we keep in touch. And I will everybody thank you for watching. Subscribe our channel and follow us on YouTube or Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We've got a lot of social media to follow us. So if you want to follow us, please do that. And yes, I will. Everybody, thank you too for watching. Everybody, I want saying bye bye. Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right. Thanks, Danny. Take care.